Good morning and welcome to the next episode. My name is Edward Peck, and today I'm joined by Mark Nelson, who is, for those of you who don't know him, he's the founder of Compass Business Finance. Compass has been operating for over 20 years, and it recently passed 100 million own book milestone. So that's a big moment for anybody's business. What makes Mark's story compelling isn't just longevity or scale, but how Compass has grown with a strong emphasis on trust, long-term relationships, disciplined risk, and a hybrid broker-lender model that's been there from day one. This conversation isn't really about shortcuts or hype. It's about building a business finance out of nothing and one that lasts. How you scale without losing your soul, and whether the systems we've built in SME finance, in the SME finance industry, genuinely serve its customers. And there's a sort of a compare and contrast between the direction in which the industry is going and perhaps a slightly different direction, which is what I see as happening in Compass. Above all, it's a story really about an entrepreneur who is remarkably similar to the customers that he serves, what he's learned along the way. Hopefully he'll have some advice to wannabe lenders who fancy doing what he has done and want to get a few tips. So, Mark, take us back to the moment before Compass existed. You were at Hitachi Capital, I think, after the industrial equipment finance acquisition. What's happening around you?
At that stage, I was just an employee. I'd specialised in the print and packaging sector for a couple of years, and industrial equipment finance had been bought by Hitachi Capital, with the senior management team taking over within Hitachi Capital Business Finance division. And that merger of those businesses, like coming together of those businesses, probably didn't quite work in the way that everyone hoped. And over a period of time, the senior management team had exited the business, and that included my father, who was the MD at that stage. So it left me and just a couple of others working within the business. And I felt at that stage that I could better service my customers by being an independent with better options in the market and provide a service level that I didn't feel I could do within Hitachi at that stage. So, yeah, it seemed a relatively straightforward decision to make, and started at the end of 2005.
So it's not a decision that many people would make, because your choices are you go and work in another big company and service your customers there, or you can't get what you want for your customers, what you said, I'll go out on my own. So what was it that you wanted to do differently with your customers that you couldn't do in a big company?
You have to recognise at that point as well, and I'm very lucky that my father, Bruce, had a wealth of experience in the market, and has been a fantastic person to be able to lean on and talk to over many years. So we discussed it. I'd always wanted to set a business up with my brother, who we're very close to, and we discussed how we would come to the market in a differing way to Hitachi as it was at the time. And you have to remember, I'd worked for Bank of Scotland and I'd worked for Hitachi, and I was still relatively young, so I can't say my experience was vast. But I felt that I could operate just in a more customer-focused way day to day, providing a service that I just wouldn't be able to provide within a bigger organisation, a more corporate organisation, both from being able to provide them with options from a multitude of funders rather than an individual funder. And I think that's a big part of the broker market even today. And also setting up an own book that allowed us to take risk decisions on customers that we knew would have viable futures.
Okay, so lots of things in what you've just said. Would it be fair to say that at the heart of it, you talked about being customer focused, you wanted to build stronger relationships with your customers to really get at what it is that they needed from you, to really understand them well so that you could supply that. And in some way you couldn't do that within larger businesses.
Absolutely. And I think what you've got to remember, I was relatively young back then. I was 25, and my brother's just a little bit older than me. So when we set up Compass, our priority was to, find a customer base for the here and now, but it was to have a business in 20, 30, 40 years' time. Therefore, the only way you do that, we felt, was to make sure you look after every customer in the best way you possibly could, because you wanted them for the future.
That's a different route to what's happening now. My view of the market is that there's a growing trend towards highly transactional broking and effectively also for lending. So it's about volume, it's about speed, it's about churn. And there you are, you're saying that's not how to serve the customers well and to create something that will endure. So why do you think the industry's drifted that way towards almost the opposite of what you're saying?
I think, look, there's always been a part of the market that's more transactional. That's always been the case and will always be the case going forward. And in fact, in a digital world where everybody wants something here and now, I can understand why a big part of the market has moved towards that transactional based business. However, there's still a massive part of the market that still wants that touch and feel, that service, that understanding of their business and what they're doing and where they're going. That more old school approach, I probably would utilize that word. And it sat us in good stead. And, if you looked at our customer base today and the number of customers that come back to us year on year, it's because they get that service level. So I'm not saying don't do the transactional stuff. Even the customers that we work with that are relationship based, they'll still have the transactional deals to do. So there's just both parts of the market that need to be.
I can see if you've got a really informed group of customers who are repeat buyers, and you might do transactions with them, and you don't really need to have great knowledge because they bring great knowledge of lending to this particular transaction. But then there are another group, aren't there? There are SMEs, the inexperienced SMEs who need advice and guidance, and they possibly need less. The two don't match up in the industry in some way. Very often you see the people who need the advice and guidance most are the ones who get the transactions as well, because they need it to be cheap and quick and all those other things. Is that the case?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't put it into designated groups. Some of my most astute customers still want that personal service, understanding of their market, understanding of their business, and want you to be involved in their decision making, and they add a value to that. But they'll also be the ones that expect it to be done here and now and get across the lines. You can't easily put it into those two groups, I wouldn't say.
Okay,
you'll just have different characteristics from different people.
Yeah, what you're saying is that you're going after a group of people who you can see significant value in developing high quality, high value relationships, and that's your marketplace. You want to find those people who you can build knowledge with over time. Can I move on to your decision to involve your family in the business? Family businesses can be quite complicated. How do you make that a strength rather than a risk?
It's been innate for us, really, Edward. Brother and I have been very close from a very young age. And we'd always wanted to do something together. So we both started off our careers. Jamie was in a very different industry and then moved across into finance, into invoice finance. And I was in asset finance. And when I had the opportunity to set up Compass, it wasn't even a decision. It was this is what we are going to do. We'll do it together and we'll work together. And I'd always say now, Jamie took the biggest risk in our business because he had a very well paid job elsewhere. And after 3 months of me running Compass, picked up the phone to him and he said, look, I'm way too busy. I need support. And he left his job and came and joined me. So he trusted his younger brother to say it'll be okay. And clearly 20 years later, it is. And I'd always say he puts up with me more than I put up with him.
Do you talk business over Sunday lunch?
We're generally pretty good, to be fair. We try and stay away from work. For the main, we generally get on. We don't fall out very often. We're there for each other, unless, of course, we're playing a sport and golf or something like that, and then we might kill each other. But no, we're very lucky in that respect.
No, perhaps we could talk a little bit about your father as well. I know a little bit about your father because I had to do the background research to the Lifetime Achievement Award that he won, I think, a couple of years ago. So as I went round the industry and talked to people, that the word elder statesman, I'm not sure he'd like that description, but the word elder statesman was used a great deal. When I look at the size of Compass, relative to some of the big beasts in the asset finance industry, it's relatively small. It's a significant business, but it's relatively small. And then there's this reputation that Compass has and the reputation that your father has alongside it, which is enormous in comparison. My memory is that he was a director of the FLA and had great influence there as well. What did he bring to Compass?
Wow, wealth over many, many years. In the early days, he didn't work within Compass. He was working elsewhere in the industry, and was just a great mentor and someone to have sat in the background that Jamie and I could lean on for guidance. And that continues today, to be fair. Often we'll sit around and talk things through. He's 74. I hope he doesn't mind me mentioning that, but he's 74, fit as a fiddle.
It's out now.
And exactly. And still exceptionally valued in this business, not just by me, Jamie, and now David, who is brought in as a shareholding director a few years ago, but also by the whole team and the youngsters especially, who look up to him and the way he holds himself, the way he operates in the business. Yeah, it's elder statesman is a great way of putting it, but a great aspiration for that younger generation.
It's a tweet for Bruce, I suspect, because it's got the word elder in there. Maybe we should just call him statesman. And of course, you brought David Bunker in 2019 from Close, I believe it was. And in many ways, what Close was some years ago is very much a similar sort of ethos to what you are now, the sort of focus on things like storybook lending and knowing your customers well and so on. What did David bring to the business?
So we got to a point within the business where we wanted to expand our offering to the market. And there was really probably 3 key people I wanted to bring in, but David being the head of those. And to be fair, we didn't really know it until it happened. It just came together over a dinner where we thought, actually, there's an opportunity here. It diversifies the mix between a family business that's operate in a relatively small scale, maybe to a slightly larger business with a diversification
the
of its
family
people.
was an advantage.
Yeah, absolutely, and it changes the outside look of us as well as a business. So, and he brought a much different approach to this business. He spent 20 plus years at Close, which I have to say, you have to respect Close as a business over many, many years. And that experience that David has had has stood us in good stead to take this business from strength to strength over the last, 7 years nearly.
Okay. So we've talked a little bit about family and we've talked about trust. You mentioned becoming a lender rather than a broker. Why was lending on your own book from the very start important?
I think for us, it was a case of there's no one going to be closer to that customer and understand what they're doing and why they're doing it than we are. And there'll be times in the market where, as much as you understand that transaction should be put together, a credit panel might not be able to do that. Or you might be able to provide a differentiator that you wouldn't be able to otherwise provide into the market. And look, the market's changed massively over 20 years. At that point in time, we decided that for the longevity of us, for the longevity of our customer relationships, having an own book was going to be a strength. And that's proven to be the case. And as of today, we lent our first amount in the very first month. And now we lend multi-millions every month. But we still broker and write our own book. And that's vital for us because that allows us to provide that service to the customer today in the same way as it did 20 years ago.
So you're able to go with a deal that you'll write because you know the customer, you have that strong relationship with them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's diversified somewhat from that nowadays. That model has changed. Obviously, nowadays it's not just as it was then, me and Jamie working away.
Sure.
I think we've got about 30 people in the business. We have a broker inside where brokers bring business to us as well. And, that they've now got that knowledge and understanding and they're equally as important to us as the end customer.
How do you deal with the tensions between the broking bit and the lender bit? I'm really thinking for other lenders, I guess there are a number of tensions that come from that hybrid position, but one of them is that the lenders may feel you're cherry picking the deals. Is that something that happens?
It's not really. No, we've actually worked very, very closely with the lenders in the market over a long, long period of time, and very lucky to have some strong relationships. And you need those. You can't write every deal. You need to be able to make sure it's the right deal in the right place in the market. And therefore, those relationships are vital to us and always have been. And the lenders know that. And like I say, very strong relationships over a long period of time.
Okay, so there are other bits of wholesale that I'd like to just cover off. The first is to answer that question, how you get started. I think you started with Hitachi, if I'm remembering rightly, for wholesale funds. How does that start, and how do you get that trust at the beginning? I'm really thinking of your message to the wannabe Marks out there.
I mean, we were quite fortunate at that moment in time. Obviously, we had my father, Bruce, standing behind us in terms of being a shareholding director and very well respected in the market, having headed up Hitachi Capital as well. So that's a bit of fortune for us. What we did, and what I'd say to anyone, is you've got to lend your own money first and foremost, so you can run a portfolio. And that's not just if it goes right or if it goes wrong. That's, the monthly direct debits or standing orders, making sure they come in, make sure you account for them, make sure you can report it correctly. That's the start base for everybody. And we took a very, very small block line in that I think it's probably the first quarter of 2026. Sorry, 2006, not 2026. And it's grown from there. But you've got to do the basics first so that people can see that you can manage a portfolio.
Okay. So, and the area that I want to talk about is the British Business Bank, and I know that you work very closely as most asset finance lenders do with the British Business Bank. I always wonder whether the British Business Bank is doing stuff that the commercial wholesale market doesn't, or whether it's just edging in and taking a bit of what was the commercial market and doing it outside the commercial market. What's your view on it all? What do you see as the main value that the BBB are creating for you? Is it a force for good in the market?
For me, the BBB is a massive force for good in the market. Huge. I mean, our relationship with them goes back 12, 13 years to the Regional Growth Fund. We were then on the steering committee for the Enterprise Finance Guarantee Scheme, the asset finance derivative that rolled into C-bills, which rolled into Recovery Loan Scheme, which rolled into the Growth Guarantee Scheme. So, and the impact that's had in the market is phenomenal. If you look on the wholesale side, we've utilised them under the match funding scheme and have talked to them about other schemes as well. And I think the match scheme works very well because it is matching other facilities in the market. So they're not trying to take away from the market, they're adding to the market and allowing further growth. Exactly what they've done for us. They've been vital to us over the last, on that side of things, probably the last five or 6 years. And our relationship will continue to develop with them.
Has it been one of the enablers for you to scale, to grow?
Absolutely. Absolutely. In many parts, the BBB have been a fantastic partner for us to be able to scale and grow without a shadow of a doubt.
So thinking about that scale and your business model, there's a tension between the two in some way, isn't there? Growing Compass and maintaining personal relationships. It gets harder as you get larger, as your business gets larger, to stay in touch with your customers, to start to make those. And you've hinted a little bit about, you're not being able to maintain those relationships in the same way. What's your view? Is there a tension between growing customers and growing Compass and keeping your business with its differentiation on personal relationships?
There is and there isn't, Edward. I think, yes, you're never going to have that day-to-day personal relationship with every customer in this business that I used to have. There's just no way of doing that. But what you have is the personal relationships within the business and the people that then showcase Compass to the market. And the people in this business are as vital as Jamie, David, my dad are, without a shadow of a doubt. And we invest our interest in them and they understand what we're trying to achieve. And then that gets passed through to our customers, to our brokers, to our suppliers, and to other people in the business as well. And that's vital. And we're very, very lucky. We've got some very, very good people in this business and they do exactly that.
But big companies don't seem to manage that, to achieve that. How do you do it? What's the secret sauce of growing, maintaining relationships? What is what you're doing different? How is it different to what the banks do, where they seem to become faithless and automated?
I think there's a couple of parts there, Edward. I think first and foremost, you've got to remember that we started this business and we've been in control of it from day one. And to set an ethos within a business as it builds is vastly easier than going into one and changing one. And the banks and financial institutions out there have been in the market a lot longer than I have, with different people running them and changes of management. So you can't easily compare those two things. They are fundamentally different. And we are very lucky in that respect. And then secondly to that, we are, and it's probably everyone will do it, but we're very careful about who we bring into Compass and making sure they fit the mold of who we are and what we're trying to achieve. And we'll work with those people as well, so they understand the ethos of how we go about our day-to-day operations. And the people in this business know that.
You mentioned before, I think, about how you manage your BDEs to become sales managers who develop those relationships. That seemed to explain it well to me. I don't know if you remember explaining it to me.
I don't know if I do. I think for me, yeah. So over many years, I've always wanted to bring up our own sales team. So we now have a team of 5 headed up by a lady who's been with us over 10 years, Kelly, and she's fantastic. That team is to bring younger generation into the business who want an opportunity, who want to be tried and tested, and we'll see where they fit. Yeah, we invest into them massively.
So you're
They're massively important.
not building them, you're not putting them into Deal Stack, but exclusively to Deal Stack. Clearly you want them to sell stuff, but you also wanted to imbue in them the things that they needed to do to become sales managers who would prioritize personal relationships, I think was the point you made before. Peck obviously is another differentiator in that, and you think about the banks putting in technology that automates transactions, and it seemed to me that you'd taken a slightly different approach on that. Can you stop systems and automation from removing the personal touch of the businesses that they're built for?
Oh, you can implement what works for you in your business without a shadow of a doubt. And we do exactly that. So we would classify ourselves as tech progressive. We like technology, but we like technology to solve a problem or create efficiency, not to replace that service that we're providing to our customers. So I brought in a software developer probably 3 or 4 years ago. It's brilliant for us. He understands what we're trying to achieve and why. And that's massive attribute to him. And how we've now embedded those systems into Compass so far, worked exactly along those lines, and will continue to do so.
And what's your view on AI? Because that should be the one that can replace the mark, develop the human relationship and help the customer. Is that something you see happening?
I don't think it will replace, no, but it will definitely support business and improve the efficiencies within a business as it already is for us. But do I see it replacing? I don't know.
You recently, I think, brought in the landscape lending platform. Why did you select that? What was important in that decision?
Again, I think it probably goes back to us being tech progressive, and Landscape is definitely that. It was a new system into the market on the cutting edge of technology. And we wanted to be ahead of the market, even though we were only very small. And we felt that they would develop hard, which they have proven to do, in the market, and we had a personal relationship with them as well, and that's vitally important to us as we have with our customers. You understand what they're trying to achieve, and that relationship's only grown over time.
How does that not surprise me that you point at the strong relationship you have with your technology people as being key, as a sort of characteristic of Compass that you should answer in that way? There've been a lot of concerns about the asset finance market, not actually because there have been specific crises. I think more that there's a concern, a read across from what's happening in other intermediary dominated markets. I'm thinking clearly of the commission disclosure crisis in auto finance. Do you have concerns about the way in which the asset finance market depends so much on brokers? Is the model flawed? As a hybrid lender, you're almost moving towards something that looks a little bit more like a direct model in some ways.
I certainly don't think the broker model is flawed, no. And I think there's a lot of brokers out there with very strong relationships with customers that provide that service similar to what we have done over many years. Do I feel there could be some more direct teams in the market? Yes. Do I think we'll move back towards that, maybe in some small way? But the market we've got is a very strong market. It's very well respected for how it services its customers, whether that's that transactional piece or is that service-based piece. What I do think we need to do, and what NACFB have started to do with their accreditation program, is to make sure that we are all operating off the same standards. And that's vitally important.
How do you manage the brokers to get because the broking market is an enormously efficient and enormously effective way of getting finance to SMEs. That's why one of the reasons we're all using it. There are clearly tensions in that relationship. Who is the broker working for?
I think that brokers they're a business in their own right. You can't take away from that. But in order for them to be a successful business, they are working with customers that have a requirement. So I don't think there is that play-off between whether the broker is working best for them or best for the customer. There will be with certain brokers. There's no two ways about that. But I think probably the vast majority are walking that path between ensuring that they service their customers the best possible way. So they provide the solutions, but garner an income so they have a business to be there similar to us in 5, 10, 15, 20 years' time. I think the play over the years has been very much the strength between a broker and a funder. And sometimes the broker has had more strength and sometimes the funder has had more strength. And there's always a change over time. It's a bit secular in that respect. I think that the more balance you get between those two parties and the closer they work together and the better the relationship they have, the better for the customer at the end of the day.
I've seen some of this from the other side. I was talking to the Guild of finance professionals, and they were saying that they had been working with a number of lenders, including Compass, and I think one of the things that you were very careful to do was to listen carefully to what they had to say about the broker agreements and listen wherever they thought there was a concern. And I think they found one word in one of your contracts that they suggested that might be changed, and you changed it immediately. But I guess that's a symbol of you taking this relationship important as an important one.
Exactly is. It should be a collaboration, not a one-sided relationship for sure. Collaboration works over a long time.
Well, thinking ahead, because you talked a number of times thinking about 20 years ahead. Do you think that the market needs more independent lenders like Compass or more banks is really what I...
Yeah. And look, I think the market needs a blend. It needs your brokers, it needs your hybrid lenders, and it needs your lenders without a shadow of a doubt. It's like any part of life, you've got to have that mix. No one size fits all. And that goes for the customer first and foremost, for the suppliers that we all work with in the market, the funders, the brokers, it's all of us. But no one size fits all.
Okay. And the advice bit for wannabe Marks. For someone who wants to follow your path, for people who tend to try to follow your path, what do you think they consistently underestimate? And what advice would you give them to get it right?
I think for me, first and foremost, is the hours you have to put in. And maybe that's pretty obvious, but the hours that went into Compass in those early years was quite phenomenal. But we always set it for the future. And you put that effort and that time in, and whatever your business model wants to be in the long term, and you might not know that as we didn't when we started out. If you put the effort in, you've got the opportunity to create it. So just don't underestimate the energy you're going to need to do that.
And has putting that energy in being worth it?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, not only from where Compass sits today, and I personally love this business, think it's fantastic, but also for the people I work with and the relationships I have with my brother, my dad, and David on a day-to-day basis. I'm very lucky.
Mark Nelson, thank you very much. Mark's story is an interesting one because it addresses many of the issues that are impacting the market right now. How do you serve customers better? How do you build outcomes for all the people involved in the SME lending ecosystem? And Mark's answer to all that is clear. I think you've heard it. In fact, even Mark at the end of this grew tired of saying it. It hasn't been just built around products or balance sheet or process. It's primarily built about relationships. Mark is saying, if you want to run a lending company, there are lots of different types of it, but this is one way you can do this job better. So for Mark, relationships are the glue that binds everybody together, and that's relationships with customers who aren't treated as transactions, but as businesses with context. It's relationships with staff who are expected to learn judgment and stewardship, not just stack volume. It's relationships with the brokers where advice and alignment matter. And it's relationships with the wholesale and institution and putting your money as well as theirs into the mix. And the model has worked. Compass has grown materially past the 100 million own book milestone and respect above the industry that outweighs their absolute size. It built a reputation for doing things properly. This is no longer a small business, but in the industry's view, it's It's a big business. The real challenge, however, and the interesting question is whether that relationship-led model can continue to scale without losing its essence. The obvious danger as businesses grow is that they drift into deal factories or start to resemble the very large institutions they once set out to be different from, where process overwhelms judgment and the individual gets lost. What's clear is that Mark is thinking very deliberately about that tension, about the operating model, about how those BDMs are developed as relationship managers, not just originators, about deploying technology carefully. And it's no surprise that he invests in CRM rather than in automation for its own sake. He does both, but he invests in the CRM and sits that at the center of his thinking. Whether emerging technology, including AI, ultimately helps preserve that value at scale or undermines it remains for us an open question. But Compass is a good example of a company that's asking the right questions early. That's it from me, Edward Peck. Have a good rest of the day.